And MSNBC anchor Andrea Mitchell joins us now from Munich, the security conference there. She is joined by Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Andrea.
Thanks so much, Anna and Jose. This has been a shock. The death of Alexei Navalny. I've covered his story. I've talked to his people, met in Washington and overseas with his advocates. He bravely went back into what was a death sentence, we all thought, and today it became a reality. We were both in the conference hall when Kamala Harris spoke to it and said that we don't, we assume it's Putin. We haven't confirmed that yet. We assume it's Putin.
Right.
And then she finished her speech, which was a blast at Putin and trying to reaffirm U.S. support for Ukraine, which I know is your passion. And then, just walking out on the stage, to our surprise, was Yulia Navalny.
Extraordinary.
Navalny, his wife.
An extraordinary.
What was your reaction?
No, an extraordinary moment, and her speech, Alexei Navalny's wife, was short and to the point. Vladimir Putin murdered my husband. There's no doubt about that, and he has to pay a price. And so this conference, in which the world is really deciding whether we are going to stay with Ukraine or whether we are going to allow Putin to march into Ukraine and perhaps into Europe, the stakes just got raised because you have now seen the clear sickness and brutality of Vladimir Putin, who is so insecure about his hold on power that he needed to murder one of his last remaining political opponents on the brink of his election that he was sure to win 98-2. That's not good enough for him. So my hope, and I think Yulia's hope, is that this puts some steel in the spine of the United States, that maybe some of these Republicans that are running away from Ukraine and to President Trump decide that democracy is worth it. Because if you abandon Ukraine, you are abandoning democracy crusaders all across the world, people like Alexei Navalny who are speaking truth to power in dictatorial regimes throughout the world. Their light is flickering today and perhaps goes out if we abandon the legacy of Alexei Navalny and we abandon the freedom fighters in Ukraine. We can't do it.
I was speaking to Mike McFaul, a close friend to Navalny's, the former ambassador to Moscow, our colleague who was here. He had dinner with Yulia last night. She had not heard or seen anything. They'd seen a video of him in the last 24 or 48 hours. He was not ill. He was in terrible conditions there, but there was nothing physically wrong with him. He was out for a walk, and suddenly he's dead. So that raises such suspicions that no one I've spoken to here has any doubt that this is an assassination.
Oh, I have no doubt that it was an assassination, in part because this is par for the course. Every single high-profile political opponent of Putin has been murdered by this regime. And second, it comes just weeks before an election in which Putin clearly wants to send a signal that if you are even thinking of being a public opponent of me and my crowd of oligarchs, you are going to pay a price of your life. So this, to me, is an open and shut case. This is a murder, one that has to come with consequences.
And I was talking to your colleague who's leading the delegation, Republican Dan Sullivan, who's fought with you for the Ukraine funding, and then everyone had the rug pulled out from them in the House when Donald Trump came out against it. So, and he was talking about how we're here, the delegation, to show the allies resolve in the fight for Ukraine. Zelensky's going to be here meeting with the vice president tomorrow, and Vice President Harris spoke in her speech about fighting for Ukraine. But what kind of resolve is it when the United States House will not vote on a supplemental for Ukraine? Europe has done $54 billion 2 weeks ago.
So, listen, I think it's incredibly important that we are here just days after the Senate voted 70-30 in favor of Ukraine aid. That's not enough Republicans, but it's a big bipartisan vote. It puts a lot of pressure on the House of Representatives. But we need to shake some sense into the House and make them understand that if you don't stop Putin here, it is very possible that there are going to be U.S. troops, men and women, dying fighting Putin inside Europe. We also have to make them understand this would be a devastating blow to U.S. credibility. just 2 years after Putin's invasion, we pull up stakes and tell Ukraine that they're on their own. No one will sign up for an alliance with the United States. No one will come to our defense ever again if they think that we're this kind of unreliable partner. So the stakes are just enormously high. They were going into today. With Navalny's death, they get even higher. And our hope is that that big bipartisan vote in the Senate can put some pressure on leadership in the House to at least call the bill for a vote. It will pass the House if they call it for a vote. That's all they have to do.
Now, you've seen the intelligence. I've done the interviews. Obviously, I can't look at the intelligence, but you're absolutely persuaded that Ukraine is running out of ammo. They don't have air defenses. They don't have the kind of ATACMS, the long-range weapons, they can only get from the United States, and that it all gets plowed back into our defense industry. It's a jobs program, and it helps our own GDP.
You don't have to listen to me. President Zelensky himself says if the United States doesn't continue to support us, we will lose the war. Right now, on many days, Ukraine is firing 1/4 of the artillery shells that Russia is. You cannot hold the line if you are firing 25% as many rounds of ammunition as your opponent is. Europe will try to fill in the balance if the United States steps out, but there are certain weapon systems that only the United States can provide. If we cut off aid, it is likely just a matter of time before Kyiv is a Russian city. That's not hyperbolic. That is just the truth of what American aid means to Ukraine.
And I know you're a Democrat, but you've been a long supporter of Ukraine. For years you've been going there. What do you think about the Republican frontrunner and former president embracing Vladimir Putin in recent days and criticizing NATO?
Well, he's basically given a green light to Putin to continue his fight in Ukraine, and he's telegraphed to Putin that if I'm president, I will wave you into Europe. Now, Europe will fight for itself, but without the United States, it'll be very difficult to maintain European security absent the United States' help. So we are potentially on the verge of World War III, because that message is not just to Russia, it's to China as well. They will start to move on neighboring nations if they think that Trump is not going to defend the post-World War II order.
Senator Chris Murphy, thank you so much.
Thank you.